Okay, good night, or good evening, everybody. It's been a long day. Okay, good evening. Welcome to our City Council meeting for March 2nd, 2023. We appreciate everyone being here and look forward to hearing from as many people as we can. So I'm going to turn the time over to Councilmember Mike Blackham. He'll provide the opening, and then he will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, so when you do have to provide the opening, sometimes you get the opportunity to take the liberties to do something that you feel you would like to do in some recognition. So if I could get Katie Nolan to come to the front right now, I'd appreciate it if she would come up. And do you have anybody else here with you? This is Katie Nolan. Katie Nolan is our head crossing guard for Kaysville City. You know, I drive in West Kaysville, East Kaysville, all of Kaysville all the time. And as I'm going, it's snowing, it's cold as could be, it's miserable. There's one thing that you're always going to see, and that's our crossing guards. And they don't get the notoriety that they deserve. And I figured if I have the opportunity to have the microphone, I'm going to do that. I'm going to read a couple little things. One of them is from Lieutenant Paul Thompson. The crossing guards fall underneath the police department. A lot of people don't know that. They think they're part of the school district or whatever, but they're actually part of our Kaysville family. They're actually Kaysville City employees. And I'm going to read this. It says, Kaysville Police currently employs 32 crossing guards. Of those 32 crossing guards, 23 are permanent part-time, 8 are substitutes, and there are 1 supervisor. They provide services to 13 schools with a combined 21 crosswalks. As you may have noticed, rain or shine, the crossing guards are at their crosswalks twice a day, about 9 months of the year. Many of our crossing guards have worked in our community for 10 plus years. The students know them by name. Without their willingness to serve in their community, hundreds of students would not have safe routes to attend school. I am truly grateful to work with so many amazing and dedicated people, and they are a large part of what makes Kaysville, Utah, hometown. To hear that coming from the supervisor and from the police department is amazing. And I just wanted to add, I know that this is really a small gesture of gratitude that I have for them. They are truly an inspiration of what it means to give back to the community and make Kaysville a great place to live and serve. And I'm just honored to be able to take a minute to recognize them and thank them very much for what they do, because they don't get a lot of thanks, and it can be very miserable out there when the wind's blowing, it's snowing, but they're there trying to get your kids across. It doesn't matter if there's 1 kid or 200 kids, they show up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to say a prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are indeed grateful to be here tonight. We are so thankful to live in this community and so grateful for all the many blessings that we have received. Please watch over our Kaysville City family, that they can do their jobs and they can do it safely and they can do it in the best of their manner. And please, that we can do what we do respectfully, and we really appreciate the community we live in, and help everybody to travel in peace and safety and get back home to their families tonight. And again, we're thankful for all these many blessings that we do have. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. If you'll all rise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So if you see these crossing guards, give them a wave and a honk. Yeah. Maybe throw a gift certificate out to them. I don't know. Anyway, thank you, Katie, for all your work and what you guys do.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was fantastic. I pass the crossing guards every day too, and see them out there bundled up. And so thanks for everything that you guys all do. Okay, so we We are all here, and this is exciting. I would like to see, okay, first of all, we have public comment. And we do have 2 items on our agenda that are action items. And I'm wondering, raise your hand if you're here to talk about Westgate. Raise them high so that we can see all of you. Okay. There are some people here that would like to talk about Westgate, and it is not an action item, so there's not an opportunity for them to comment during that time. There are also people here, I think, that are here to talk about Prop 5, the text amendment adjustment, as well as perhaps the, let's see, what else do we have? The mixed-use overlay zone. So I'm wondering if the people that signed up for Prop 5, or no, sorry, public comment would be willing to wait and talk during the action items. That would be maybe Lynn. Would you be willing to do that?
I think he's talking about.
Oh, you can't? Is that better? Oh, okay. We have a couple of people who've signed up to speak under public comment, but we have a lot of residents here that would also like to speak. So if you've signed up to speak as a public comment in the beginning, but you have an action item that you would actually like to speak on, the power amendment or the text amendment to the power issue, would you be willing to speak during that action item instead? The people I'm talking to would be Lynn, Susan, and LeVar. Would you guys be willing to speak under the action item instead of during public comment so other people can speak that are here from Westgate? You still can't hear me?
All right, everybody leave.
Okay. Susan, LeVar, and Lynn, will you come up to the front for just a minute? Really? They're not working? Okay, and I'll ask my question for you. Are you guys here to speak about the power text amendment?
I am for that as well.
Okay, so you have 2 things you'd like to speak on. Okay, thank you.
I think that's the same.
Is that the same? Is that the same with you, Lynn? Okay, you want to speak about 2 different items? One action item and something else?
Do you want to push the public comment after the presentations of the requirement and everything? We're okay.
Oh, okay. Well, we've got some other families here with young children that want to talk about Westgate. So, okay. All right. Okay, let's do that. Thank you. Okay, then what we'll do is... Okay, so then the people I have signed up to speak under the public comment section, which is coming up, are the following: Clarissa Parker, Avery Taylor, Rebecca Taylor, Blake Montgomery. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then Ed Davis. Okay, let me explain how public comment works. You'll have 3 minutes to speak to us. We don't interrupt you and we don't comment on your questions if you have them. We'll smile politely and listen to you, but we are listening, so remember that. If you'd like to yield some of your 3 minutes to someone else who might want to speak and add something to what you've already contributed, you can do that as long as it's within that 3-minute time. I understand a lot of you wanted to sign up, but there weren't a lot of spots. Okay, we'd like to hear from as many as we can within the time frame that's allowed. So I will invite the first person to come up and speak. Can you still not hear me?
The speakers are up as loud as they go. We'll just need to have everyone try and be as quiet as possible.
Okay, if we could try to be... Yeah, you guys are being quiet, so anyway. Okay, for public comment, you'll have 3 minutes. It'll be timed. At the end of the 3 minutes, please end your comments. The first speaker will be Clarissa Parker. I'll invite you up. Oh, at the very end. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to Avery. Avery, you get to be first.
Hi, my name is Avery. My family moved to our neighborhood a year ago. I was so excited to be across from Case Creek Elementary School and in a place with so many kids my age. We walk to and from school together every day. I love our neighborhood. It is where Harper, me, and my sister Lila ride our rollerblades, where my sister Annie learned to ride her bike, where I cross the street to help my neighbor put her kids to bed, where Lila and Micah Montgomery ride their bikes with their dad, and where our neighborhood dog, Moose, goes on his walks. I am very sad to hear our bike and scooter path may be ruined by cars and big trucks coming through our neighborhood. I want to ask all of the kids from my neighborhood who are here to support me to stand up. Please do everything you can to protect me and my friends and keep our neighborhood safe by not letting the gas station have their entrances on our street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good job, Avery. That was great. Rebecca.
Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you for your efforts on our behalf. You know, a lot of you have spent some time of your own personal time searching and trying to figure out solutions, so we do appreciate that. And I also like to thank my husband and other friends as well who have spent countless hours as well trying to advocate for our children. I want to clarify that in showing up to speak tonight, we are not asking you to eliminate the gas station, but we are running out of time and options. We are asking you as our elected advocates to protect our neighborhood by doing all that you can to eliminate access to the gas station from our neighborhood. I'd like to share the story of how we ended up in the Westgate neighborhood. My husband and I have lived in 5 different states in 11 years and have had 5 children. We have moved our family and started over so many times. We decided when we got the chance to move back to Utah that we would not be moving again. So we spent quite a bit of time finding where we'd like to land. We chose Kaysville because of the semi-rural feel that Kaysville offers, as well as something that specifically drew us to our neighborhood was that we felt our kids could enjoy playing outside with friends without me being super paranoid about their safety. We have lived in Virginia, Arizona, New Mexico, and Idaho. In all of those different states, I've been unable to feel comfortable letting my kids play outside by themselves without me. We even had a camera installed outside one of our homes so I could feel comfortable watching them play while I did the dishes. I thought neighborhoods like this didn't exist anymore, but the last year has proved me wrong. In so many ways, it has been a dream. We feel like we found our home, and our neighborhood is truly a slice of heaven. In the short years since we've been here, we as neighbors have experienced real tragedy together. We've helped each other and we've played together. I'd like to I'll give the packet out to you guys, the little pictures. And the first page is a bunch of these neighborhood kids on their route to and from school. It's in front of the Montgomery home, right where the entrance to the gas station will be. The idea of a gas station entrance into our neighborhood, not next to, but actually into and on a residential road, doesn't just concern us for the safety of our kids or the economic impact to our homes, but it does shatter some dreams of what our neighborhood is and could be. As you consider your difficult task of balancing landowner rights with the well-being of the community, we hope you'll remember our little scooter gang and this crowd here. And in order to protect our neighborhood, we ask that you, as our elected advocates, do all that is in your power to prevent Westgate access to the Come and Go gas station. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Blake.
Hello again, City Council and Mayor. Blake Montgomery. Live directly across from where the proposed Come and Go gas station entrance is going to be on Westgate Lane. I'll keep this brief. I'll email each of you a little bit more in depth, kind of what I want to do. I want to respect people's time here. I do know that last week we sent each of you a letter requesting to take some action on this development. We were hoping that a moratorium would help to be able to navigate through the compelling countervailing public interest that we gathered from over 300 signatures for this property. All we wanted was to be able to get some solutions that, according to City Code 17-1-2, we wanted the solutions that would provide for the health, safety, and welfare and promote the prosperity, improve the morals, peace, and good order, comfort, convenience, and aesthetics of the municipality and its present and future inhabitants. By not taking action, it felt like we ran out of a lot of time. And tonight we're just here to ask for action, for help as our elected advocates, to help us to be able to find a solution that will be able to keep that access off of Westgate Lane. Going through the general plan, there's multiple instances in there where it says to protect the neighborhoods, protect the barrier between commercial and residential. And like I said, I'll email you kind of those goals that I found, and so you can look at them and kind of interpret them the way you feel. But I feel that it is necessary to be able to provide that adequate buffer. And I appreciate the concessions that have been made and the requests that have been made to place a buffer and a nice 7-foot precast fence to buffer out some of our neighbors. But that doesn't do anything for those of us on Westgate. Like they said, for my kids that love to ride their bikes and are not going to be able to really be able to do that because they'll be going right into a gas station where big trucks will be coming out. Like I say, I had a lot more I wanted to say, but I want to keep it brief and respect everyone's time. So I will send you all an email, and I just ask you that in order to protect our neighborhood, we're asking you as elected officials to do all you can to advocate for us. Use the power that you have to try and get that access off of Westgate Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Ed. Oh, Clarissa.
I'm obviously not Ed Davis. I'm Clarissa Parker. There's a map coming to you, if we could get that passed out quickly just for time's sake. I am going to, as quickly as I can, explain the traffic concerns we have here. A couple of you have been out there, but for those that haven't, I really want you to visually see why we have such concerns with the school traffic and specifically the access for coming from Westgate into that gas station. So the blue line is the school traffic. As people go and drop off and pick up their kids, the cars line up sometimes as far as Wellington Drive, all the way back there, just cars parked waiting to get into the school. So when that time comes, cars want to go to the gas station, they're going to follow that green arrow, and if they're coming towards the west, they're not going to want to wait in a long line of cars. So they're going to see that they can just go around that church into our neighborhood, down Summerfield, onto Westgate Lane, and turn into the gas station there, causing lots of cars to be driving past our residential neighborhoods every single day, especially during the time that kids are out walking to and from school. The other one I wanted to show you is the truck route. They will take that red route down 200 North, turn into Westgate, and access that ingress-egress on Westgate Lane. That's right where all of our kids are crossing to go to school. So there's these big tankers crossing the same paths that our children are, and we want to keep them safe. We're not asking for the moon. We're asking for a reasonable, logical, and ethical decision to be made. We implore you to advocate on our behalf. Appeal to Come and Go's corporate citizenship in your city and ask them to be a good community partner and neighbor. If they refuse, then we ask you to recognize this for the compelling, countervailing public interest that it is, and reject the plan unless they move access exclusively to 200 North. What would be easier to defend? That there was compelling, countervailing public interest, or that there wasn't? I just want to end with one quick quote from Professor Dumbledore. He says, "It is our choices that show who we truly are, not our abilities." Please, City Council, make the choice to stand up for us, to work for us. You are our elected advocates, and we're begging you to make that choice and stand up and prevent the access to the commercial law on Westgate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tevin.
Yeah, so Tevin Parker taking Ed's time. I just want to describe briefly our neighborhood and the people in it. I gave you a map as well. I think it was handed out of marking the households and the children currently in our neighborhood. Most of us have lived in our homes for a year or less. Many of us have come back home after being out of state in Nevada, Idaho, Ohio, Texas, Oregon, or elsewhere in Utah, and we identified Kaysville as a great place to live, and that's what brought us here. But and even though we're all new, coming from all over the place, we're a pretty tight-knit group over such a short time. These people behind me and supporting us here, so kind, generous people, the type of people everybody would want as neighbors and residents of a city. We help each other as every new house is moved into. We've taken turns laying sod for each other's yards. When my wife and I had our newest baby that we've been holding, we were flooded with meals, offers of help. We shovel each other's driveways, especially for those that are older or sick or out of town or otherwise in need. And then when we heard that one of our newest neighbors' husband, cancer returned aggressively, we came together financially and in manpower, put their yard in and a trampoline and built a play set so their young family could enjoy making some memories during such a suffocating trial that ultimately took the father's life. So we were all complete strangers a few months ago, and now we're like family. And this is just the beginning of our neighborhood. There's another 100 homes coming in with hundreds of more children to add on to the 60 that are already there. Most of us that are 16 and under, most are 10 and under. And it's ultimately the innocent children that are going to be impacted by this the most, with that access in our neighborhood. And that's who we're here for. They're our motivation for the hours and hours we've spent meeting with you and asking and pleading for help. It's for our children. And I just want you to imagine looking in their faces, wondering if there was more that you should have done to protect their route to school and ability to play together in our neighborhood. And I want Come and Go to look them in the eye and tell them the tanker convenience and potential business advantage of access in our neighborhood is more important than their safety and well-being. So please, show them that they matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Tavin. Okay, that will close our public comment portion of the meeting at this time. Thank you for participating. We appreciate you being here. Okay, now we're moving on to presentations and awards. I'm going to turn the time over to Chief Erickson. I'm so glad that you're all here because you're able to find out about our outstanding fire department. And I will turn the time over to him to present 2 awards and then do present his report.
Mayor, council, city leaders, residents of Kaysville, fellow firefighters, thank you for your time this evening. I have a couple of awards to present, and it is a good feeling to do that. The first one, my fault, it's late, Mr. James Walter Wade. He's been with us for 21 years this past September. I wanted to give him his 20-year plaque, and that's an achievement. Wade was never a firefighter until he came to Kaysville. He was on ski patrol for 15 years. He's a paramedic at Dugway for the past 15 years. Ski patrol for 10 years. Worked at the burn unit at U of U for 5 years. Married to a beautiful young lady, Angela. 3 kids. 35 years and 3 days. Is that correct, James? Is it 3 days?
That's great.
But what an achievement. James, can you come up here, please? Kaysville City Fire Department presented to firefighter James Wade. Congratulations on 20 years of outstanding service to the community of Kaysville.
Congratulations.
Barry, we shouldn't make you walk down twice, sorry. Yeah, we are.
Next presentation is always nice as well. Spencer Brothers, firefighter paramedic for us, had a really good year. All of our firefighters had a good year. Our awards program, you're submitted by your peers. He was actually nominated by 2 separate people. It just shows a lot what he's doing. Ultrasound program, we're one of the few fire departments in the state that use an ultrasound to find veins, to get good IVs. He made a medication flip chart book for us. He's an advanced mentor for Weber State University, or excuse me, an adjunct and mentor for Weber State. He's one of our ACLS, our Advanced Cardiac Life Support, and Pediatric Advanced Life Support instructors. He's advisor and point person for our medical director, Dr. Yerman. U of U ER paramedic. He's had some great saves with his fellow firefighters. Speaking of saves that I'll talk about a little bit later in my other presentation, he was part of 2 of 4 saves that we've had so far this year, and just does a great job for us. He really does. Spencer, can you come up here, please? Uh, 2022 Firefighter of the Year, presented to firefighter Spencer Brothers.
Feels a little awkward. Thank you guys for the award. There's really any number of people in the department that could have received this award. We've got a lot of hardworking, smart firefighters that are working their butt off to make this a great department. And it really is a great department. I think we provide a really high standard of care for our patients. And I think it is a great department because of the resources that the city has invested into our department. And I'm really grateful for them doing that. I'm grateful to work for a place that is full of good people, and Kaysville is that kind of place. I'm grateful to work for a community that values their first responders. So to the City Council, to Mayor Tran, to Chief Erickson, thank you. Very much. Next, I'd like to just do our 2022 roll-up with numbers, show you
how we've done this year. So here we go. We'll do a station staffing, vehicles, training, prevention, and public education that we do, safety, health, and wellness. I'll show you our fire districts, our coverage that we had the past 5 years, requirement standard, where we failed, and day of the week, time of day, and then some benchmarks that we keep track of every year. There's our current fire station up on Main Street, Station 61. That's how many full-time firefighters, part-time, and so forth. These are our vehicles. We just put a new medic rescue in service on July of 2021 when we received our ALS license. So that's been a good deal. There's what we do training-wise. So contrary to popular belief, we just don't sit around and play video games.
Shine your trucks.
We actually have a lot of classes that we have to do, especially on the medical side. 64% of our calls are medical, so it's very important. Plus, there's time expirations on them, so we have to keep up on those as well. Public education, fire prevention. We really took a seat back after the pandemic, not an excuse, just a fact. So now we started back up, but there's some of the things we do. We do not have a fire marshal other than myself or inspectors, so the crews go out and inspect as well. So they help out a lot. Here's what we do on safety and health and wellness. We have monthly safety meetings, annual physical exams, annual fitness evaluations. We talk about near misses that happen in our profession throughout the nation so we don't make that same mistake. After action reports when we have critical incidents. And the firefighter safety stand down, which is every June for about a week. We just talk about firefighter safety. On that note, I'd like to say something about Mitch Probert. He's one of our firefighters behind us, currently a paramedic student. Mitch sends out, I asked him on our health and wellness to send out a newsletter every month. So he sends out a newsletter every month. It puts some exercise tips in there. Mitch is actually a fitness trainer. We're actually going to send him to get certified for a class. Cool. Our standard's called to have a fitness trainer. He puts menus out there. He's actually the cook on B shift. They do a great job. I don't know how they eat when he's off, but Mitch does Mitch does a really good job. So I just wanted to put that in there. There's our zones that we have with 3 mutual aid areas. They're fire response zones. That's through our entire city. Mutual aid, that's how many automatic aid. Automatic aid meaning if we get a structural fire, we don't have to call for Layton, we don't have to call for Farmington. They're automatically in what we call our stacks, so they automatically send engines to our city. Automatic aid given, you can look at the 59 and 115, so we go a lot to other cities. And what has been given to us is the 98 number, the 55 and the 43. So we help each other quite a bit. I believe with that Western Davis corridor open up and the access to the west side of our city, will probably be on the stacks going into Syracuse because we'll have the ability to beat Layton in there. So it'd be more advantageous to both communities and serve them better to do that. So it'll be a good thing. Here's what we cover. It's actually about 33,000 and some change as far as residents, square miles. That's been our call volume over the years. As you can see, it's rising. Even with losing Fruit Heights, which accounted for about 213, 214 calls a year, we're still going up in numbers. 62% on EMS rates, 38% on fire responses. As you can see, we've risen. We traditionally, since we've been tracking our numbers since I've been here in 2017, we've been about 16 to 18% on the west side. We jumped up to 20% now. What that overlap response is, so 16% of our calls, so about 340 responses, we get double hit. So we'll be called out, we'll be out of call, and then we'll get another call in our city. Okay. And we manage that quite well, especially with running 8 now, when we used to run 3 when I first got here 5.5 years ago. 55 reported fires. Now, that's a little deceiving. We generally get about 6 to 8 house fires that consume a lot of the resident. So that's fires from just stove fires, grass fires, that's everything. So I don't have them bring them down. Going back to what we said earlier about saves, we had 12 saves last year, 4 cardiac arrests. We keep involved with representatives, usually the ER directors at hospitals. So when we bring a patient in, we get feedback on it. We do case reviews. Did you do that case review on the 7th? Is that correct? Of March? We're doing a case review with Davis of a patient that we brought in. What can we do better? What can they do better? And then they want to give us what we did right. You know, so it's a good thing that we have with the hospitals. Here's our requirements. Basically, in a nutshell, the standard says we have X amount of minutes to get from point A to point B when we're called. Dispatch has some time to get to us. We have some time to turn out and put our gear on and go to the call. And that standard is 90%. Here's where I throw this in. We fail to meet the standard. The standard doesn't allow you to take out any responses. So mutual aids, if it takes us 15 minutes to get to Farmington because we're on the south end of Farmington or we're on the north end of Layton and it takes us X amount of time, 1710 doesn't take that into account. A response is a response. So as you can see on the busted calls on the one below, so we took out our mutual aid responses, Fruit Heights, going into Fruit Heights, and we minused our non-emergent because when we get an alpha call, you know, a fall, a sprained ankle, or something like that, we don't go lights and sirens. We follow road signs and everything. So our compliant taking those out is actually 83%. We've never been that high. And so that is definitely a tribute to the men and women standing behind me, for sure. That means they're getting off what they need to do. They're not getting complacent. They're paying attention to the call, and they're driving in a safely manner to get to the call. So thank you to them, for sure. I put this together because some people ask, so I've always tracked this. Throughout the year, April, I don't know, April, springtime, people happy, I don't know. I'm sure Cameron, when he does our Facebook page, he'll put something on there with the dad bods and going to run. And so I don't know why April is the thing. We haven't figured that out. But as you can see, that Monday, Tuesday, you throw Thursday in there. Saturday's an oddity back in 2009 or 19, pardon me. And there's our time of day. We're generally busy about 8 in the morning until about 10 at night. That's 10, 11 at night. Certifications, our benchmark for certifications, and everybody's 100% qualified for their position. That we can't waver off that. We do not put anybody in any position that they are not certified to or licensed to. PPE inspections. For our full-time employees, we have them sign off their PPE every month, make sure it's good to go and they're prepared. That's been really good. Training benchmark is 80% for us. We were at 96% last year of training complete with everything we do. We have an annual training plan that we put together in November for the next year. We finished up in November for November of 22 to finish up 23. And a lot of our stuff is based on responses that we've had. Are we training enough in this particular area? Where did we fail? Where can we get better? So that's always nice. And then response times, like I said, 83%. That's just outstanding. It really is. Any questions?
Councilmember Adams.
I was only kidding.
Oh, well, you're going to get one anyway. I'd like to pontificate for a moment. No, the only question that came up was more, I'm curious about Fruit Heights. Since Fruit Heights' departure, have you noticed any significant differences with our fire department? And maybe speak on that. I mean, I guess, you know, from our standpoint, it was a budget hit, right? Because they weren't going to pay us anymore. But I'd like to know maybe if there were some benefits to their departure in the sense that, like, are you tracking how often we're having to go up there still?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. And I guess that's not in your report, but I love that stuff to be public. I mean, maybe you don't want to talk about it right now, which is fine.
We're in the process of putting together our annual report. our other ones. So that report will be live here a few weeks.
Okay.
And that will be in the report.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So,
Councilmember Oaks.
yeah, so Chief, your training, your benchmark's 80%. Is that because of part-time getting them in? I'm almost surprised that that's not 95 or 100 on trying to have training at.
You know, I don't know if I was aiming low, but that's really been the standard across the board for 80% based on leaves and people missing training because they got other training. You don't do a whole lot of makeup training. The only makeup training that I require is all of our medical stuff they have to do and make it up, and all of our annual stuff. Our SCBA donning and doffing test, our annual physical fitness test, any of the annual stuff they have to do if they're on or off duty. But it is tough. You know, I don't want to downplay as far as the hours. We are busy, as you can see, and our folks only work 10 days a month. And so it's very difficult to fill up, 12 training classes that you actually do a good class with and not pencil whip anything and do some substandard training. It's hard to do. You do so many good medical classes, and you can be there for 3 hours, especially if you're going over techniques and stuff like that. And that's just what we put on our ATP. That doesn't count the advanced airway class that we're having as a 2-day course coming up. We have way different courses. We're hosting an inspector course right now. We have people going to fire investigator course. So we have so many moving parts all over.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
I have 2 questions, and thank you, Chief, and thank you for all of you and your service to our city and our surrounding cities. Now, did you say Cameron is in charge of the Facebook page?
Man, I should not have. Yeah.
Is Cameron here? No. Okay, I was going to have him raise his hand. I haven't met him.
Right.
Well, thanks to Cameron, my wife actually pays attention now to your Facebook page, and as most of us do. So that's great. Well, my other question is, I know that the Davis Tech Center, they were lobbying the state and working to try to get a fire tower for training on campus.
I testified at one of the committees last year.
And can you speak to that? How would that benefit our folks here in our city and surrounding cities as far as training?
And actually, I'm glad you asked that. So we had our ISO inspection today, your insurance rating. And that's one of the points. Now, it's a few points, but that's one of the points. They even asked that specifically, do you go to anybody's tower? The only one that really has a tower around is Layton, and it's on their northeast end. And they have academies and stuff because they're running recruits through. So even Davis Tech is having a hard time doing that. That would benefit us greatly.
Okay.
Anytime you have an opportunity to get some real world training in a tower and test your folks is always way better, for sure.
Yeah, thanks for speaking to that. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Chief, thank you so much. We appreciate your presentation.
Thank you. I don't know the score or whatever, but it looks like we'll go from a 3 to a 4. We did quite well in the fire department. Your ISO ratings, 50 points go to fire.
Really?
4 to a 3. 4 to a 3, sorry. What did I say, 3 to a 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have never said that.
Always getting better.
Yeah, I just left that part out.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right.
Lowest is better. 1 to 10 it goes to. Our water system, my hat's off to Josh and all of his folks at Public Works. Matter of fact, the evaluator today said that water is the hardest to get. It's worth 40 points. So it's 40% of your score. And they did an excellent job of getting them all the data that they need. They didn't even need to go to speak to them.
Oh, that's
so
great.
It went really well today. I asked him for how we can get better. What can we do? So he's going to send me a deficiencies things, where we can grow and where we can get better. And that'll be one of them. So, very good.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate your time. Do we have any conflicts of interest to declare, Council? No conflicts of interest. Okay, good. We'll move on to our consent items. Number 5 Does someone want to make a motion to approve the consent agenda? Councilmember Adams.
Well, I will make a motion that we approve consent items A through D. Can I ask how much we saved, though, on the roundabout, or do I have to remove it to ask that question, Nick?
I think if you're just going to ask that question and we have a quick answer, that's fine. If we're going to go into a discussion, we should pull it off.
Just curious how much we saved on that. I've had a lot of people really want to know on that roundabout. Didn't we save money on the?
We went from, I can answer that.
Yeah.
Councilmember Blackham.
The bids came in about 80% over what the engineer's estimate was originally, which was, and it came in at 1.8 million, a little over 1.8 million, and we are getting it for 1.2.
Nice.
Yes, it was a great job on behalf of Public Works and Josh.
So that's, did anybody want a second?
We have a motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. A call for a vote. Councilmember Blackham.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to our action items. Action item 6A, an ordinance amending Kaysville City's Ordinance 4-2-7, electric revenues and rates regarding electric fund transfers. I will turn the time over to Dean in a minute, but I just wanted to quickly kind of summarize why this is on the agenda. About 6 months ago, we had some council members who were interested in looking at the different options for the city. Last year, we chose not to hold a truth and taxation hearings, wanting to keep the rates and be as conservative as we could. And so some of the council members suggested that we look at some enterprise funds, specifically power, because it is allowed that transfers happen as long as the process is transparent and noticed, and we have public hearings and the rules are followed in order to do that. So we started these discussions about 6 months ago. During the course of the last 6 months, our decision was to be very slow, very transparent in the communications that we were having regarding the possibility of entertaining a transfer like this. We recently have received new information. As many people know, power rates are increasing, the cost of infrastructure is increasing, transformers are increasing, and so we've agreed several months ago to put this on the agenda for March, and so that's why it's on the agenda to have a decision. I will turn the time over to Dean. Did I miss anything? No?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure I can add anything else.
Okay.
This is a follow-up from our December meeting.
Okay.
The council asked us to return this to your table sometime this spring, so it's back before you to consider, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I want to say a couple things. I really appreciate the council. We have had a very interesting discussion about this. We've explored, part of our responsibility to be fiscally responsible is to make sure that we all are on the same page and we have all the information, and we've explored all the options within the city. And so as we've done so, I think we've come to some conclusions, so it's on the agenda as an action item.
Do we have a call for the public?
We do, well,
sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry, we do, yes, good point. Okay, so we do. We have a couple of people signed up to speak. Sorry about that, public. I know you're here to speak about this. Okay, public comment. We have Val Starkey, Susan Lee, Jill Dredge, and Nidra Saunders. If you'll come up in that order, you have 3 minutes. And thank you for reminding me.
Good evening. I'm Val Starkey, 573 South 350 East. I'm here to support Proposition 5 because it was voted on. I'm here to support the power company because we all use the power, and the infrastructure is where I'm mostly focused. So I found a friend, John Palmer, resident West Kaysville power engineer, who sent us an email, and I'm going to quote 3 things from him to remind you. I sent you that back, I think, in January 31st. And Item number 1, he says, based on the reliability study, the ECI study that Alan had done, he says the study is not sufficient basis for which to draw a conclusion about the investment needed to maintain the capabilities and reliabilities of the infrastructure. Okay, so the answer is, the reason I'm here is not to say, one, we couldn't take money from it, but the fact is the infrastructure is old. The best example is the rumors we've heard. I've tried to substantiate them. Rocky Mountain analyzed it, considered, and said, no way are we buying Kaysville Power because it'd take $80 million to get it up to speed, okay? Which tells us it's old. Item number 2, he says, we need to deal with the inspection and testing of the infrastructure. Brian has given me some updates, and yes, those things are in work. John has offered, not as an engineer, but as a concerned citizen, to come and give a second, third look. My encouragement is, please consider that. Please ask the power company to ask for a freebie to help look at and see if there's something they've missed, okay? Because it is cheap. I could say simply that inspection is something that we all do. This last week I was in Washington. My grandson, I looked at these outlets and found them to be loose. And teaching him, he said, go look at this other one. This other one has some brown mark, okay? And I said, this is why we're doing it. Not that he understood, he didn't. But as soon as I identified the brown spot, this could be a splice in a line that has the same kind of fit.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Starkey. Thank you.
Thanks, Val.
Thank you, Val. Susan.
Nope. No, the mic's not on.
Seems like it's, oh, there we go. I appreciate the opportunity to stand before you and to give a perspective of someone who was at the forefront of stopping the electric fund monies being transferred. When I've told you this story before, but when I was first put on the city council, Mayor Hyatt put me over the electric fund as my council assignment. I went and did all the trainings. I went to UAMPS. I did everything that was required and quickly found out that we were in a very, very bad state of affairs with the infrastructure and with the reserve fund for the power company. And I knew something had to be done. And luckily, prior to me getting on the city council, we had gotten Prop 5 passed. And it wasn't easy. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of door knocking, a lot of collecting signatures. This was not done overnight. And the people got to vote, and they voted Prop 5. Yes, we won it. They wanted to stop the transferring of the funds. So this wasn't done overnight. It wasn't simple. Then all of you had the chance to hear Alan Farnes come up and speak. He is the chairman on the Power Commission. And he told you that the Power Commission unanimously voted to not have you change Prop 5. Do not amend it. Do not. It's not perfect, yes, but it is in place, and it is what the voice of the people have asked of the city council of the city, to not transfer those funds. And there's a good reason. There's a lot of hard things that are coming up with our electricity. The price of it is going up. And so we need to protect that. We need to stop that. You know, you open the door, and once you open the door, you're not always going to be here. the next council or the next mayor. That's what you're going to have to think about if you overturn this, and I hope you don't. One other thing, I did talk to Mayor Hyatt, who I served with on the city council yesterday, and he said, even if I disagreed with Prop 5, I would never, ever vote to overturn the will of the people. And I would ask that you have the same respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill. Hi.
I'm Jill Dredge and live at 1102 Dover and a 38-year resident of Kaysville. And I've lived here long enough. I lived here when about 10, 12 years ago the power went out. Went out for 4 days. Homes were left vacant at Christmas time. Water pipes, of course, broke, and there was a lot of damage done. They had to bring in people from all over to get our power back up. And when that happened, it came out that our power situation here in Kaysville was very serious. Prop 5 then came about, and the people voted for it. So I would respectfully ask that we protect the homes, the water pipes, and Prop 5, and keep that in place only for power. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nidra?
I'm Nedra Saunders, and I live at 578 South, 300 East. I've been here 40 years. I was one of those who helped work hard to preserve keeping the funds in place for the power company. Worked hard to support and fight for Proposition 5. I ask that you please be mindful of the will of us who voted for that. I think as we desire to be transparent, just saying that we want to do this doesn't always work. We, as the community, as citizens and individually, that was our voice to say, please leave those funds in their designated place. I say sometimes as we look at where needs are, I've even told my sons, sometimes when you've budgeted for tuition, that's got to be there so that you can count on it. Sometimes there's creative ways that we need to solve things, but this is not taking funds from the power designation is not that creative way. I think we can do other things as a very volunteer, community-oriented area that we live in, and I hope I'm not rambling too much. Just we, the people, voted for Prop 5. So please don't take away that transparency. If you do so, you take away good budgeting, I feel like, and the voice of me and the people who voted for that. Please leave that in place. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nedra.
Thank you.
All right, we will close public comment. And did you have something you want to say?
Mayor, I'd just like to make a motion on this. I think we've talked about it a lot, and I'd just like to make a motion that we deny the change in ordinance amending Kaysville City Ordinance 4-2-7 electrical revenues and rates regarding electric fund transfers.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments?
A lot of comments.
Okay, a lot of comments. Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want to applaud our community for coming out and sharing your concerns with us, because ultimately, you know, as a council, it's our due diligence to review these things and to try to use the sacred tax dollars to the best of their ability. And I've just been so impressed with everyone who's sent emails, phone calls, having you here tonight to speak on this issue. And I just want to applaud you on that. And, you know, I've learned a thing or two talking about it and researching it. And I just want to thank everyone. So that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Oaks?
Yeah, sure. I've got a lot of thoughts. I mean, we've seen countless emails in droves over this, and a lot of misconceptions, and I think misrepresenting what we were thinking about as a council in our discussions. And I think that's unfortunate because we've been called criminals, received already taken funds out and have used them. A lot of misinformation, and I think that's unfortunate. You know, however you feel about it, because when you go back and I remember Prop 5. You know, hadn't lived here that long, and I remember people coming to the door, knocking on the door, and saying, "Hey, sign this because the city's done this or that, but you're going to get money back every year." And that's what I remember, and that's why I voted for Prop 5, and I've never received a dime. And so I think there was a lot, you know, when, I don't want to say misrepresentation because you have people knocking doors, but having learned what I've learned, and I really appreciate Susan's comments a couple times because the fact that there was no money in the fund, and Prop 5's worked, and I applaud that because we have raised the money we have for the power company to be able to work to take care of some of the projects that were not being done. And when we started having this discussion, and it was, okay, we need to have at least $8 million. And we had more than that. And we had our power director here, and we directly asked him, is there anything that you can't do on your 5-year plan if we did this, if we changed the ordinance? And the answer was no. And so that's some of the information we have as councils, and we rely on others to help inform us. And so sometimes it's okay, do we use excess funds? And if we have excess funds that go for more power stuff, if they have other projects that we could accelerate or not, every single one of us would be all for that. How do we improve the situation or in the city? Because that's what those funds are for. But if not, if it would cost more or the timing's not right, do we end up raising taxes on the citizens when we have excess funds that just sit there? And that was part of our discussion. How do we be fiscally responsible for those we're serving in this manner? And so that's in a little bit, you know, some of the decision. Life's changed in the last 6 months. The rates were so much more expensive. Is like, oh my heck. And I don't see it getting better. And so I'm grateful that we as a council said, hey, we want to do this and go through this very slowly. I hate the transparency word, but be slow and think about it and talk about it. Because the world's changed. I still personally feel that if you have excess funds and you don't have power projects to spend them on, and you have the excess, then it's worthwhile to be able to use for one-time capital purchases at some level. And that's to be debated upon. But the world has changed. And for the foreseeable future, I don't see probably addressing this until things calm down, and that might be during the millennium. So anyways, there's my...
Thank you, Councilmember Oaks. Councilmember Blackham.
I'm going to try to sum this up. I'm probably going to be a little long-winded here, but I'm actually one of those who is in favor of using excess power funds to make one-time capital improvements. And I'm going to tell you, I've been around Kaysville City. I've worked for Kaysville City for a long time before I got to this position, and I saw the benefits that having excess power funds was to the city. Now, were there some mistakes made? Was it spent on some things that should have not been spent on? Yes, I think so. And I'm going to use one example. One example is the fact that we were able to take the money from the power funds and purchase the property that the Smith Market is on now. The Kaysville City was able to dictate what was going to go on to that corner, and I don't know what we would do without the Smiths now being on that corner. Had that been private development, I don't know what would have went there, but it probably would have not been a Smith's. And that Smith serves the community. Not only does it serve the community, but it returns over $300,000 to the city every year. Those monies were paid back to the power fund. We get the money in sales tax. That was an absolute win-win by using excess power funds because the council had the ability to do that at the time. We have an ordinance, Kaysville City 113. Kaysville City 113 says that if there is a state law that comes in place and it's in conflict with your city ordinance, the state law shall prevail. And that's also in Kaysville City Ordinances 115. If you look at the Utah State Legislature, the Utah State Legislature made a law. It's Title 10, Chapter 6, 135.5. And it's we're to transfer of enterprise funds to another fund. Well, we don't know, and I want to make it very clear, we are not taking any money out tonight. This is just a tool that gives the council the ability to do so when there are excess funds. For me, raising taxes is not always the answer. Having a power company, I want it to be an asset. I don't want it to always be something that's negative. We don't get cheaper power rates. Our power rates are about the same as everybody else's. They're higher than some, lower than others. But when you're looking at a budget and you look at the whole budget for the city and you realize you're in tough times and you realize you have millions of dollars excess in one area, I want to be able to use that. I want to be able to have that tool, to be able to use that tool to try to limit raising your taxes all the time. Because once your taxes are raised, they don't ever go down. The nice thing about maybe being able to use excess power funds is because you are able to do it for one-time purchases. If the purchases need to be in the power company, then that's where they need to be. But I mean, and to do it, not only to be able to take and transfer those funds, you have to hold a completely separate hearing, public hearing, that the public gets to come and voice their opinions. You have to specifically call out exactly what you're going to spend that money for, and it's very transparent. That's all in the law. That's all in the state law that's there. And the one thing I really want to kind of make clear is people act like we're stealing money from the power company. We are not. It's your money. It's all our money. It's our money.
I'm going to interrupt you for just a minute.
Okay.
If our audience could be respectful, we'd really appreciate it. Please, if you have comments to make or you want to have discussions, please go in the lobby. And if you don't, please just be respectful and listen so that everyone can hear. Thank you. Go ahead.
So it's just money, and the way it's been used in the past. Right, when they use the money to pay for the police officers, that's the gift that keeps on giving. You have to have that every year. But when you're using it to pay for, say, a part of a fire truck or a playground equipment or something, or buying property to put a Smith's on that you can get a return on, that's reinvesting in your community. I don't see how that's a bad thing. I know if I have a savings account of my own and I need to buy a car and I've been saving that savings, or if I have to get a big loan to pay the car off, I'm going to dip into my savings to buy that car and not have to get my monthly costs up and try to keep them at a level area. And people say it's the will of the people. You're taking the money from the people. Every year, our legislature goes through there and spends 45 days changing rules and laws that affect us as cities. You all want to live in a neighborhood of single-family dwellings. That's what we want in Kaysville City. That's what we've always tried. We've tried to get our zoning and that to follow our single-family dwellings. Our legislature a year ago made it so that I can put another family in every single one of the homes in Kaysville City. Did you want that? You probably didn't want that, but you voted that you wanted only single family. Our legislature changed it. So things do change. And do I think it was a good thing or a bad thing? We've got to do something about this affordable housing crisis. Whether I agree with it or I don't, change does happen. Change comes. So because you have something on the books that was proved once doesn't mean it's never going to change. So it's just a tool. It's just another tool that I want to have in the toolbox of city funds and city budgets that you can use when you need it, if you need it, without deteriorating or making something else not whole. That's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Blackham. Anyone else have any comments? Oh, Councilmember Adams, go ahead.
I'll be quick. I seconded the motion, and so, explain from a standpoint, I think Councilmember Blackham's, he's good, right? I mean, he's so smart, and I appreciate him so much. And I think initially when we had talked about this, I was interested, and Mr. Galbraith in the back would tell you that we had talked about, well, couldn't we use some of the power funds to save the old library or something like that? And it is hard to see this money sitting there and think like we have to raise taxes, but we have all this money sitting over here. And so that was initially the appeal, right? Was that you sit there and think, how could we not have to raise taxes and be able to use some of this what initially looked like slush fund. And I think that what I've had a chance to learn more about, and I think this discussion's been awesome. I think it's been constructive. I think we've learned a lot. I think people have gotten involved in power where they normally hadn't been. And for me, it came down to taxation without representation is probably the thing that kept coming up in my mind. The idea that we would be spending the money that you've put into paying for your power bill on something that's not power related was hard for me to justify. Whereas taxes, when we raise taxes, we're doing it because we have to spend it in the city. And it was the will of the people that voted. Do I think that it's always going to be that way? I don't know. Maybe things will change, but right now I think that it's clear that that's where I stand, is that I'd like to keep it the same as the will of the people. That's it.
If that's all right.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Councilmember Hunt.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. I think I made the motion. I think that kind of speaks for itself, but I've felt uncomfortable with the idea of doing this kind of since the beginning, but I'm glad that we've had the opportunity to vet it out and see, possible pros and cons. And I appreciate everyone for giving us information and for our council for really digging into it and looking into all the aspects. I feel a lot more educated. But yeah, for me, it's always kind of been the piece that, I'll try to talk fast. When I was on Planning Commission, we always were wishing that we had a real concrete evidence of what everyone in Kaysville wanted, because every neighborhood affects all of Kaysville, and we were able to get that in terms of the general plan with a statistically valid survey, but that doesn't happen very often. So it's very difficult to gauge what everyone in Kaysville wants. And for me, Prop 5 is one of those few moments in time where we were able to get a look. It was not that long ago. 9-10 years ago. It just not enough, I think, has changed to justify changing that. So that's kind of always been the big thing for me.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Hunt. I'm just going to add a quick comment. I really appreciate all the comments that have been made, and especially Councilmember Oak's comment that, you've elected us to be people who are responsible for fiscal responsibility, and you've asked us, as we've campaigned, we've said, okay, we believe in good governance. Well, what does that actually mean? I think that what you're seeing is demonstrated right here. Good governance is the ability to take some hard looks at some situations, to evaluate it, and to really see what is in the best interest of the entire city as much as we can support the entire city. So the fact that we looked at this as a possible alternative is not bad policy. And the fact that some of you were so outraged by that, I'm kind of disappointed. I would hope that you'd have a little bit more trust in us to be able to really put on our adult hats with the varied experience that we bring to the table, and trust us that we are going to do everything we can to take the time to make good decisions. You know, there are many reasons why we looked at this. Like I mentioned, truth in taxation, we're doing the best job we can to make sure that we are responsible with the money that we have been entrusted to manage for the city. So this to me is a typical example of what good governance should look like. And so I'm very proud of everybody up here. We've looked at different areas. We've looked at and said, okay, is this a good idea? Other cities do it, and they do it very successfully, and they do it, and their communities are okay with it because it's part of their budget process. And so not looking at it, to me, would be kind of irresponsible of us. And so that's why it was brought forward, and that's why we've had these discussions. Now, as I talk about being transparent, we all know what that means. This is what it looks like. It looks like we're noticing people. We're letting people know this is the discussion that we're going to have. We told you from the very beginning that we would take a lot of time to really vet this out. And we've done that. And I think that everyone's done a really good job. And it's been because of you and because of your input that we've been able to do even a better job. So we appreciate the public information and the participation, because this is what it looks like to be a great community that's well run and well managed. And so kudos to the council, you know, because I think that they've done a good job. As we've looked at all options, we really are responsible to make a recommendation and make decisions that are in the best interest of as many people as possible. So when you look at the power funds, you know, as we've looked at our budget over the last couple of years that I've been involved, we've been able to say, okay, we've got good savings in our general fund. Maybe we should use some of that money instead of raise taxes. But what I've seen happen is we've done that the last couple of years, and then we're also looking at the power funds as another source. I'm glad that we've slowed the process and that we're looking at it realistically. Councilmember Adams mentioned. What did you say? Truth taxes without representation, and really, you know, we're going to have to make some hard decisions during this budget cycle that's coming up. Costs are increasing, and now we can look at you in the eye and say, look, we've looked at all of the options that we possibly could have available. And depending on how this vote goes, you'll know that we've done the best job that we can, so that when we have those budget discussions, which are coming up in the next month or two, we can do so, and we know that we've done a good job and done our homework. So with that being said, I appreciate you all being here and appreciate your involvement. I will call for a vote. We have a motion and a second to deny changing the ordinance. So I will go to Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 Nay.
Okay, so motion passes, and motion carries. Thank you for being here for that. Okay, we're going to go to action item 6B, an ordinance amending Title 17.
Mayor,
excuse me.
I don't know when you were going to have Lynn and those others that signed up.
I'm going to do it at the end.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, but thank you. Okay, an ordinance amending Title 17, Chapter 27 of the Kaysville Municipal Code regarding mixed-use zoning district overlay. Melinda.
Mayor, members of the council.
Thank you.
This has been in your packet twice. I hope you have all had an opportunity to read this. We did have a brief discussion at the last meeting, so I just want to answer what questions you may have, and if you want me to go over anything, I can pull up the ordinance and we can go through that. Let me just do that right now, actually.
Okay, so before we do that, we do have a couple people signed up for public comment, so I'll open up public comment for this. Actually, we have one individual signed up, Lorene Starkey.
Ask my questions as a statement. I have some neighbors that have made a choice to come to the council, and they noticed as we were going through this and we want to be clear that maybe we don't understand, but there was some changing in the zoning laws to allow alcohol. And the concern of the citizens is, in a general way, we'd like to keep our city the way that we want it to keep, and maybe not lower the standards for liquor laws or some of the other things to bring in the commercial. And so maybe if you could keep that in mind and maybe explain to us where that is not happening, and maybe just comfort people that we won't have, I don't know if I remember this correctly, but I know when we first moved here that there was some loss of life at a motel, and it's no longer a motel. But I'm just saying that I think that we need to be vigilant and keeping our standards high. And I also had a neighbor ask me to petition for them to, on this mixed zoning law, we can't change the zoning for commercial that's by the Golden West Credit Union. It's been changed, and it is commercial, but she was moaning and kind of very sad in the idea that we can possibly do what is possible to keep the historic nature of the historic buildings that are old, like the Photofly building. She was very sad. She said, Laureen, can you please petition the community? I know that you can't change the commercial zoning laws from something that is already there. But if you could know that your citizens care about what's historic, and we'd like to keep it.
Thank you. Okay, we don't have anyone else signed up to speak, so I will close public comment. Going back to Melinda.
Mayor, if you'd like, I could answer Ms. Starsky's question about, so in land use, so our current zone for general commercial has two sections. One is a permitted use and the other is a conditional use. A conditional use is allowed. It just is a use that may have to have different mitigation factors. And so where I have changed this is moving it from what is a conditional use to a permitted use. And that just essentially eliminates the burden of review. Most often on conditional uses, well, not most often, but on conditional uses, we are obligated to approve conditions that are only listed in the code at the time of that conditional use permit. And so we're really limited on what we can regulate. And so best practice is really to have your conditional uses on the books for a few years, and you go through the process several times, you work through it, you realize what maybe shortfalls there are with your code, and you change your code to address those shortfalls, and then you move a conditional use up to a permitted use. So that's the intent with the change that I am doing here. It's not changing anything it's not adding an additional use that isn't currently allowed. It's just recognizing the fact that in the opinion of staff, we've had that addressed over and over again, and there really isn't anything additional to regulate on that.
Will you also speak to liquor licenses in Kaysville? I know we have them. I know that we've got several restaurants that... Yes.
So the state regulates, so there's two different categories of alcohol licensing. There's on-premise consumption licensing and then off-premise consumption. So I've had a whirlwind of a day with trying to learn additional information about off-premise, but on-premise consumption licensing is 100% regulated by the state. They go out to every single site, they verify that everything within that site is meeting the state statutes, and that if there's distance requirements from community places, they go out, they field, verify, they measure every single location in the state. We do not license that at all. We don't regulate that at all. We don't have an ability to. On the on-premise consumption, the state has preempted our local authority to do any regulating of that. We've discovered, and it just in the last couple days, that with the off-premise consumption or the off-premise sales, which that's typically your Smiths, your convenience stores that sells the cases of beer, the state does not regulate that. And so it is incumbent upon a municipality, if they would like, to set up their own regulations for that. We are in the middle of trying to dig a little bit deeper into what that would mean. And we'll be coming back to the council with additional information on that when we have more information for you. But there are many places within the community that do sell beer from their stores, their convenience stores. There are many locations that have restaurant licenses to sell beer, serve beer with your meals, and so what I have proposed with the change in code would not change anything from what currently is established with those on-premise consumption.
Okay, thank you. That's what we wanted to know. Councilmember Jackson.
Hey, I have a quick question. I was going through the document and the beer-only restaurant stuck out to me, and my first thought was, is this a bar? What would be a beer-only restaurant in this context? Because that concerned me.
I'd have to probably look at state code to have that defined. It just was what was already in our code. And also I'd have to look at our code to see if we have, I don't know if Mr. Mills could pull that up real quick, but to see if we have a definition in our own Title 17 of what a beer-only restaurant would be, but I would think it would be more
That means
of a
they just
bar.
don't. Yeah, that just means they don't have a hard liquor license, right? That's
yeah,
what I
so
would assume.
it's just your neighborhood bar, but they're not selling the liquor. It's just beer.
Oh, okay, like a restaurant or whatnot. So, okay.
Well, a restaurant is different, but yeah. So I mean, I would think that the beer-only restaurants would just be more of a beverage, and not a menu full of entrees to choose from. But I don't know.
It wouldn't be a great business model here.
No, it wouldn't fit real well in Kaysville, I don't think either.
I mean, should we strike that out?
They'll serve food, but they can serve beer with the food, but they're not serving hard liquor with the food.
Okay.
That's how I read it.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions, Councilmember Blackham?
The only question and comment I had on this, because I had a real concern, because this is a new ordinance that's actually only been used at one time so far. And when we first did the mixed use ordinance, it was very concerning to think that somebody, obviously to get ground in Kaysville and be able to put as many residential units on it as you possibly can is like gold, okay? But that's not the best thing for the community. I wanted us to be able to have, if we have a general commercial or a central commercial zone, I wanted that to be the most important part of that zone. So there was the 50% in there that said if you were going to do an overlay zone for the mixed use, you had to, if it was a general commercial zone, it had to at least be 50% general commercial. I think as long as the development agreement has to be with every mixed use zone, that gives us the legislative authority to make sure that we get what we need. So an example I'm trying to use is like last council meeting, we approved a plat that had a lot 3 and 4. They showed a 2-story office building on lot 4 and wanted townhouses on lot 3. Well, that's not really what we were looking for in the mixed use. On 2 separate parcels of property, they would be sold separately. What we were looking for, I think, in the mixed use was trying to find areas where we could have commercial on the main floor and maybe some residential on the 2nd and 3rd floor above, or something like that. My biggest fear was somebody would come in and take a big piece of our general commercial ground, put a 3-story office building on it, count that square footage, and then when in reality, there's no mixed use there. That parcel of ground, if it's a hotel, is owned by the hotel. It's going to be separately owned by them, but they're going to get all the credits for that commercial for the rest of the property to do some type of just probably solely residential. And I think in a commercial area, that's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for live-works units. We're looking for some residential. But we also want to emphasize the underlying zone. If it's commercial, central commercial, we want to be able to do that. I think the development agreement allows us to make that legislative call so we can say, all right, if you're proposing a hotel, we're not going to give you the mixed use overlay on that portion of the property. It's a separate piece. we're not going to approve that. We're going to approve that as your general commercial zone for your hotel. If you want to propose mixed use on the remainder of the property and have some sort of commercial residential, I think each one of those we have to and will have to look at individually. That's kind of what I'm getting out of a development agreement has to, with the minimum of at least 30% of the underlying zone of whatever it is.
Yeah, so you're absolutely correct. This ordinance is new to Kaysville. We've had one project come through. And although I have had quite a bit of experience with code writing and mixed use projects, mixed use is very tricky to get right. So I think the way we have this written and the fact that every mixed use project will require a development agreement, that really gives us the flexibility to bring forward a good project. And I think at the end of this, regardless of what an underlying zone is, and I would encourage to think less of that, but more of a project, the goal is to bring forward a successful project, one that the council, the community would be supportive of, that would be proud of, that would be a great addition to our community, and not one that is set up for failure. The requirement of commercial space is very difficult, and I've been through a few different reiterations of how you require that. We've had codes that's required all of the first ground floor level to be commercial. Well, commercial depth on a lot of the uses, I mean, if you think of the little strip mall over here, it's probably 40, 50 feet deep, if that. And so if you have your entire width of ground floor, 150 feet deep of commercial, you just don't have a lot of usable commercial space. So we want to make sure as well that we get usable commercial space, that we get commercial space that's going to be leasable, that's going to be occupied. And so there is a very fine balance that you have to find between that. And I think the way the code is written, so essentially you think of this mixed use zone is an overlay, but it's a rezone. So we have the full discretion through that development agreement to require pretty much anything we want, to allow pretty much anything we feel like would work, and just really base it off of what's being site specific versus trying to write code based on, I mean, so, and I said this to Councilmember Hunt when we were talking the other day, but our code is one dimension. But we're trying to write code in one dimension when what we end up with out there is a three-dimensional project. And so it's really hard to get something right on paper when we're talking.
Yeah. And my biggest fear was having something that had no legislative bite to it, and that development agreement takes care of that. And I think it keeps us from approving projects that just don't work. I mean, we really do need to look at trying to get some more commercial in this city. We really do. I know it's hard for people to buy it and want, but we have certain roads that are very busy roads, and commercial lends itself to be very admirable there, you know. And so and I think this does that. So I think it's answered all my questions by looking at that.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams.
Yeah, I just thank you so much for your work on this. And like, seriously, awesome work. And I agree with Councilmember Blackham. I think that the development agreement gives it so that we can look at it and we aren't just bound to, like, well, they're fulfilling, you know, kind of, we've had a situation lately where it's like, well, they're fulfilling everything, so we can't really say mum about anything. Like, I drove to Moab. Actually, it was in Blanding. I had to go down to a hospital there, and the only place to stay was a motel. And I thought, oh, a motel, and got in there, and it was like the cutest place. I want to take my wife back there, and you know, it was all rustic and wood everywhere. And so, you know, I think that from a standpoint of like, you know, this provides us the opportunity to be able to say, well, I mean, gosh, these guys have presented a great reason why there should be a beer-only restaurant at this place. Maybe we say that should be approved, but it has to come through us, and they can't just do it without basically meeting the needs. And so great job. I'm happy about it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Mayor?
Councilmember Hunt. Go
Sorry.
ahead.
I'm going to move off kind of from what we've been talking about on development agreements and just bring up a concern I had about sexually oriented businesses. And I guess whoever makes the motion or whatever, I would just like you to consider adding that we exclude mixed use from that zone in town every.
Say it one more time, what it was. No, I didn't. I didn't hear what you said.
Sexually oriented businesses.
Oh, I didn't hear. Okay.
SOBs for short. Did that help, Mike? John?
I didn't mean to have you say it again.
Abby, could you repeat yourself one more time, please?
I think you did kind of tuck your voice down.
Well,
okay.
I was afraid there were still kids listening.
Right.
They're asleep.
Just to consider taking it so that and if I am understanding this correctly, every city in the state has to have like a designated area for those sorts of businesses. And I just would like to make sure that we never have the possibility of mixed use residential in those.
Well, and Melinda, you can speak to it, but currently our SOB zone is along the frontage on the west side where there are lots of already, I mean, I don't know if there's any developable.
It's 650 west off of 200 north.
Yeah.
If there's available property there.
Yeah, so
there's not, but just in case.
Yes.
Yeah, but
legally we do have to have a zone that allows sexually oriented businesses. There, it's Title 17, Chapter 36 that addresses that, and there is an overlay zone. The only place in the city those could be located is, yes, off of 650 west, north of 200 north. But I am happy to add into the 1727.4 prohibited uses and just clarify that we wouldn't want to have sexually oriented businesses within a mixed use zone. And I think that's absolutely acceptable to add that in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Okay, I have a bunch of questions and a few statements. Similar to Councilmember Hunt, I would like to remove motels.
He's talking about how cute the one was.
I think, and
Seriously, Wendy?
Councilmember Adams. Sorry. We have to keep him in line, so.
And I have stayed in and seen some very wonderful motels. But we are a small community, and at the end of the day, if this remains on here, we don't have the ability, if someone comes in and says, I'm going to do a hotel, but then when they crunch the numbers, it's going to be a motel. And then oftentimes motels can bring different clientele, of course. I spoke with one of our police officers, and they said that they've seen crime go up quite a bit in Farmington because of the all the shopping and whatnot. And so I do not think this is a community that needs a motel. I'm open to a hotel in certain areas. I think a hotel may be great over by where the Taco Bell's going in, but that's just my opinion. I'm curious what the rest of the council thinks, but I would like to remove motels from
just
this.
real quick. So
Councilmember Adams.
You said that we don't have the ability. I think we do. So if someone were to come and say, I want to put a motel, and that's what Councilmember Blackman was pointing out, was that it would have to come with a development agreement. And so legislatively, we could deny it if it didn't fit, if it didn't work, right? Is that not true?
Yes, it is true.
That's correct.
So I guess like it would have, like, I'm just saying, I guess hypothetically, I'm saying like if somebody came in with like a really cute looking idea and it was like, but that's a motel, it's like, yeah, but it's cute and looks good, versus like if someone comes in and, I guess the point is like, I would agree with you if it meant that once it's here, then we don't get to see it. Then it's just like, as long as you meet the standards, you can put in the seediest place you want, but it's still going to have to come to us, right?
That's correct. And I would also say, I'm not sure that the distinction between hotel and motel is so drastic that, I mean, obviously you'd have a development agreement that you'd be able to approve it, but I don't know how clear that distinction is. I know that like there are certain businesses that are clearly motels and they're clearly on one end of the spectrum, and other establishments that are clearly hotels on the other end of the spectrum, but there are a number of businesses kind of in the middle that I think would be, those businesses could point at the code and say, you allow hotels, we're a hotel. And we would say, well, there's certain aspects, but I don't know that, and maybe Ms. Greenwood could chime in if she feels differently, but I don't know that in my mind the distinction is drastic enough that you could clearly delineate those two.
Yeah, I have the same question, but this is what our code defines. So I looked at hotel, it says C motor hotel. And so in our code, a motel and a hotel is one of the same. And that was kind of a question that I had, Councilmember Hunt and I talked about this yesterday. And so, you know, quick Google, like, I don't know, is a motel a subset of a hotel technically? So it's, I mean, I think our definition essentially says they are one and the same. So, but the ability for the council to be very specific in what they want is absolutely here in this case.
Okay, and just to speak to that, it was brought up by one of our residents too. We're not always going to be here, and I just like to think long term, like what type of community do we want for the future? And you know, if the motel lobbyists start pouring in money and vote us all, get us all out of office, then I'm concerned about that. And you know, I think we can all understand that there is a clear distinction when we look at a building, motel versus a hotel. I'm just concerned about that. But I understand if within code, if we can't really make that distinction. As far as the architectural design of a facility, is that, because obviously most motels will have access to rooms on the outside, and then hotels usually on the inside.
Correct.
Could we put more clarification within our code as far as the architectural design and things like that?
You could, but again, the development agreement will allow us to give direction on architectural styling. So I think it would be difficult to outline that in code because again, it would be very project specific in what a developer is bringing forward. But I think that's absolutely something that could be done. That we can work on. Negotiated along with the development agreement.
Okay, that's helpful. And then a couple more things. I'll move quickly here. Let's see here. Oh, thank you for adding no storage units. I appreciate that. I saw that. Okay, so 17-27-7 development standards.
Adam's head. There we go.
And I believe this is for the LI zone. Can we add in there, would it be appropriate to add at the end of that paragraph, the compatibility and review? It reads, the Community Development Department staff, relative to other affected uses and structures, they will conduct a review, location, orientation, operation, architecture, massing, scale, visual and sound privacy. I was wondering if would sound, not sound, but visual include landscaping?
Sorry. Under number 1. Oh, okay, there we go. Sorry.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, I'm with you now. Please.
Okay, just the last part of part A. It says that the Community Development Department will conduct a review. Location, orientation, operation, architecture, massing, scale, and visual and sound privacy. Would it be appropriate to add in landscaping and also a provision to gather input from people who live nearby in that zone as applicable or as appropriate?
I would not recommend trying to get opinions of residents. That's just.
There's very few areas in the city that this would be applicable, but
well, it would
there
be,
are some
it would
homes
be
nearby.
anywhere somebody applies for, but I think the better approach would be you as the council represent what you believe the residents would want.
Okay.
Getting into a situation where we're canvassing a neighborhood and trying to get input. You know, I mean, I like craftsman traditional style, but somebody else likes a very different type of.
So that would be better left to this type of setting as it comes before the council?
So,
okay.
Yeah.
And then what about landscaping, or would that fall under visual?
Let me turn to that.
Council member, I believe it says anytime anybody provides a mixed use application, they have to provide a site plan, a landscape plan, an amenities plan, a conceptual building elevation and design scheme, streetscape, traffic study, and a circulation plan. That's all.
And that's already included. Okay.
Yeah.
Now that's helpful for clarification.
Yeah, and we here it is right here. And we did do that with the mixed use project we passed in January, and part of what I requested when working with the developer was that they look at waterwise landscaping throughout their project. I think that's something that's very important, especially now that people actually believe we're in a drought, even though we've been in one for quite a while. But yeah, and I think that, again, because this would come accompanied with a development agreement, that if there was anything specific that made sense based on that site, we could require that. So if there was something sensitive there, a stream or some type of an amenity that we wanted to have certain type of landscaping, we could build that in.
Okay. And then my last question, it's about parking, and we've talked about this before, and I believe it might fall under 17-27-7, the same section. And then under 5, parking and circulation. I'm not sure if it's the same number on this sheet.
Where's my parking?
There we go. Yep.
Okay, yes. All right, so it talks about establishing different parking stalls and in residential parking requirements, studio units, 1 parking stall, 1 bedroom, and so on. And then down below that, under number 2, transit-based parking reductions. And it said that within this language, we can reduce the amount of parking spots depending on how close it is to a transit stop. Are we talking like bus stops?
Well, so yes, because we don't have any rail transit within our community, and I don't think we will. But candidly, we don't have great bus service in the community, and so I tried to write this in such a way that if we are going to make a reduction, we're looking at actual data. We're looking at how many people are boarding, or so that's your alighting. How many people are riding in that neighborhood? Because we don't want a situation where somebody comes in and says, look, there's a bus stop out here, it never gets used, but we can reduce our traffic. Or we can reduce our parking requirements because of that. This is also in there because when we identified the selections from state code on our moderate income housing, this was one that we selected, that we would look at parking reductions. But I personally feel like in a community like Kaysville, 25% is way too aggressive. Mm-hmm. I think 10% is a lot more reasonable than the 25%. We just don't have good access to transit.
So is that the state recommending 25% reductions based on how close?
No, that was what was in the code that was adopted prior to my time here. So it was adopted in October of 2020.
The first draft.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is much better. And, I would just like to say, we've talked about this before. It is a concern of mine when developers come in, and like the one behind Smith's, when they had all the parking down on one side, but it was quite a long distance. I just want the information here to be clear that to space those out and to have an appropriate amount of public spaces. And so,
yeah, we can look at that. And again, based on the actual project that's coming forward, where it would make sense to scatter some of that parking. One thing I did do was I did change some of the parking requirements, requiring more parking based on the larger size of residential units that would be provided. And I think the ratios that we have here, I mean, we almost had World War III in the last place that I worked, talking about parking requirements between engineering and the planning department. And this is exactly what we settled on there, with one exception. The studio units was 1.15. But let me state that was in a mixed use code that didn't require a development agreement to come forward. So yeah, you had to be very, very methodical in what you put in the code. Okay. And here we do have that flexibility, like we built that in the last project. So if there is something that just doesn't seem correct, then we can put that in the development agreement.
And would it be better to do it on a case-by-case basis like that versus having the language kind of set in stone here?
I think so. And we do have the provision for shared parking as well. So there could be a scenario where you have an opportunity for shared parking. You have day uses that are very intense, that are complementary. Like an example I would share would be the megaplex over in Centerville. They have several apartment buildings right there, and office buildings as well as the movie theater. And so those office buildings in the day, people are there working. The parking is for the apartments, maybe they're working in the same area, but most likely the people there are going to be gone during the day. So there's an opportunity to reduce some of the parking requirements based on that shared time of use. Okay. But we would only do that with, again, one of the things I really want to push forward with this is that we're making decisions based on data and an analysis. And so that's where I'm saying we're not going to just give that to you without having some type of a parking study done.
Well, that's all for me, but I really appreciate all the work you've put into this and tightening it up, and thanks for the clarification.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm ready to make one.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance amending Title 17, Chapter 27 of the Kaysville Municipal Code regarding mixed-use zoning district overlay, with the addition that we include in the motion sexually oriented businesses not be allowed.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments? Nope, seeing no comments, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Hunt.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Melinda, for all your great work on that. Appreciate it. So I'm going to, earlier we had a little bit of confusion regarding the public comment, and people couldn't really hear what I was asking. So we have 3 people that signed up originally to speak, and I will invite you to come up now. You've got your 3 minutes, and then we'll move on to our work items, so you don't have to continue to stay. Lynn Galbraith will be our first speaker, then LeVar Thompson, and then Susan Lee.
Mayor and Council, appreciate this opportunity of addressing you. I would first of all like to clear my name, Mr. Adams. We were sitting in a meeting with the mayor, Mayor Witt, and I had this bright idea to borrow money from Prop 5 with the ironclad agreement that it would be paid back. And he now says do that, but he forgot to mention that Mayor Witt jumped all down my throat. You remember that?
Yeah, horrible.
Money is for, Prop 5 is for use for the power fund. I got chewed out on that, so I didn't bring that up again. So, well, I appreciate this opportunity. What we'd like to do is to present to the council why we feel that this historic building should remain in public hands and not turn over to private hands. You know, I've been at this for many years. I counted back, and it's been about 12 years when I first became involved with this use of this building here. And we had hoped to do two things with it, to put a museum in there along with the art gallery, and to use it as a multicultural center. It was actually Council Member Dave Adams' idea to make it a community center. And it was a great idea because then it would have a multi-use opportunity. Originally, the city was going to use that building, and they took the responsibility for funding for it. I suppose they were going to use another one, Mike, maybe you can remember, they were going to use a city money, a bond. They're also looking into getting grant money. But then they lost interest in it. They had bigger and better ideas. But in the process, they had promised the citizens that they could use that building for a museum. And Mike took us on a tour of that. Do you remember that, Mike? We went on a tour of that building, and myself, Mr. Adams, and Councilmember Hanson. And as we stood in that southeast corner, we said this is an ideal spot for a museum to complement the gallery. Well, things have changed. In August of 2021, I got a long-distance call from Councilmember Tammy Tron. Remember that? I happened to be in Idaho. We have a cabin up in Island Park. And she said, Lynn, you need to know something. Mayor Witt said she has the votes to tear the building down. That's after 5 years of dealing with her to save the building and even talking about its use as a cultural center. I don't know, politics and politicians. So we rallied the troops, and some of you were at that meeting that we had, and after a lot of public debate, the council voted in favor of saving that building and using it for public use. Fast forward to 2023, new council, new rules, new ideas, new philosophies. Now the council wants to take it away from the public and turn it into private hands. And this is something we're opposed to. For one thing, it was promised for multiple use.
Lynn, I'm sorry, your time is up, but I appreciate your presentation.
Well, thank you, but you know, can I say something? Why do you limit us to 3 minutes? It's not fair, and it's not fair to limit the people to only 5 that can speak. It's a disservice. Sorry.
Thank you. LeVar.
Yeah.
My name is LeVar Thompson, and I hate to admit it, and I don't feel it, but in a couple of weeks I'm going to be 81 years old. All right. I've been here almost my whole life. I can walk from this building to every home I've ever lived in, and it wouldn't be that bad. And I have as bad legs as about anybody has, and I could still do it. We have tried, a group of us, to get that building for many years, or to get a museum here. And we're giving up, a lot of us. And I have accumulated through the years a lot of historical items. And I'm not going to give them to Kaysville, period, and neither are other people. Bountiful has a nice museum. Centerville, with a fraction of our population, has a nice museum. Farmington has a museum. Layton has a museum. Syracuse has a museum. We have no plans. The city council and the city people aren't even talking about it now. They're talking about having a restaurant there. We have a lot of restaurants. We have no museum. We have no place to hold a museum. And I would bet that if we don't have a museum in the next couple of years and have plans for Arts Center, we're not going to have it in your lifetime or anybody that's here now. Nobody is going to see a museum in Kaysville. And I would bet money that Fruit Heights will have it way before we do. So we've got to do something or you're going to lose a lot of people. When we started working on this, I was young. I was healthy. Now I have had surgeries. My legs have problems. I don't walk the same. I'd still put a lot of time and effort in it. We could get a lot of volunteers. But we're getting older. And it's not going to stay the same. And I was asked at the last council meeting with one of these council members why we hadn't raised a lot of money. Well, we can't because you guys haven't said where we're going to have it or what we're going to have. And I'm not going to trust the city any more than I've trusted the city on the Proposition 5 to have a museum. So why would I give money and donate money to a museum? And I don't think anybody else would either. Now, when I say museum, I'm also saying art gallery. And I don't know what's going to happen. I haven't talked to Stewart's. I don't know Stewart's terribly well, but I know more people in this town than most people have because I was here when there weren't near as many of us. We had one of the biggest businesses as a family back in the 1950s and 60s and 70s and early 80s in Kaysville. And we know a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of people about it. And earlier this week, we had a big group of couples together, and I asked them what they thought about the building, the rock building. I'm not going to call it the old library because it was something else long before it was the library to me. And that's where I was drafted. And that's where I got my vaccination shots when I was a little kid because that was the county health center. And that's where we went. But we're going to see things happen with those paintings, I would bet, if we don't have some place to exhibit them. Because we haven't exhibited them for years, and we have no plans to exhibit them. And we've broken the agreement with the Stewart family. What's going to happen, I don't know. But we've got to do something soon, or it's not going to happen in our lifetimes. None of your lifetimes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Susan.
Thank you for sliding us in sooner. So you walk into this building, and what do you think? It's sterile. It doesn't really have any heritage that shows for it. I know you're working on the Wall of Mayors, but we used to have a great big portrait painting of the first postmaster of Kaysville City sitting behind you, and it's gone. There's no representation anymore when you walk into this building, and I feel like that's what it feels like for Kaysville as citizens. We don't have a representation for our heritage, for who we are. How many of you know what's going to happen in 2 years for Kaysville? 175 years, one of the oldest cities outside of Salt Lake County is what we're going to celebrate. Wouldn't it be cool if we could cut the ribbon for the museum, the LeConte Stewart Art Gallery, bring the people together to celebrate who we are, show what we have. You know, I know the mayor is on board. She wants to save that library. She said it on her website when she was campaigning. She said, I'm all in to save the old Kaysville Library. Those that do care about preserving it care deeply. And I can tell you, this place was filled. It's later, so a lot of them had to leave. Filled with people that care about that building and have been fighting for years to preserve it. But not to preserve it to become a restaurant. They are fighting to preserve it for a museum, for the LeConte Stewart Art Gallery. That's what they're preserving it for. And I know that you went on to say on your website, you said, I will lead out and empower the Museum and Preservation Committee with the support they need to get approvals for grants and fundraising efforts. I want to see that happen, to continue that. But we're running out of time, like Clavar said. They're getting old, these people that have all these treasures that would love to share them with us. They're dying off, and it's sad. It's really sad. And so I would ask that we do everything we can to bring back the LeConte Stewart Art Gallery so we can start showing off the great people that we have here. Maybe we can highlight the 7th governor of our state, Governor Blood, who was from Kaysville, in our museum. There's a lot that Kaysville has had that we have no place to display it, to educate, to show the kids. And that's so important, and I hope that you rethink.
It's your time.
Anyway, I hope you rethink and really trust to do that.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. And now we'll go on to our work item, which is 7A, discussion of amendment to Title 17, Chapter 33, sign regulations regarding limiting the size and height of signs. I will turn the time over along the West Davis corridor. Turn the time over to Melinda to present this. Oh, no, me? I will present it. I will talk about it. We'll ask you questions about it.
I did do a little bit of research I can share with the council. So we did have a text amendment, I think it was in January, in front of the Planning Commission to amend the sign code. The Planning Commission asked us at the meeting to go and do some additional research on scenic sign regulations within scenic byway. So what we found was, and I'm just going to go off of Legacy, there are other scenic byways. There's 128 in Moab area that goes up the river and all the way up to Grand Junction. That's a scenic byway, but it's all BLM land. There's nothing to have signs or businesses. So along Legacy, which is the one most germane to our conversation, I don't believe West Bountiful does any different sign regulations along the corridor. Centerville does have a regulation where they don't allow signage within 150 feet of a shore, so they have a shore protection ordinance. And Farmington does not have anything. And so those would be really the three entities along Legacy. There's also Woods Cross, and I don't think that they had anything specific for signage. So the West Davis corridor is going to be a scenic byway similar to Legacy Parkway. And so UDOT does have a different kind of signage along a scenic corridor. So you drive along Legacy and you notice that the off-ramp for Parish Lane or whatever, it's a nicer sign. It's a it's a rusted metal-looking sign. It's not just your standard, very, out of the box along I-15. It is a different type of signage that UDOT puts in. They will not regulate anything outside of their right-of-way. So our sign code, we don't allow for off-premise signage, and so the concern of having a billboard is really not anything that is a reasonable concern because we just don't allow them. The conclusion that we came to on the signage for the one area that we have commercial along the West Davis corridor is that a sign height of 30 feet would be allowed. And that's based on the classification of West Davis corridor being a principal arterial. And so then we have within a certain distance of a principal arterial, this is how tall of a sign that you can have. So I am absolutely willing to do more research and dig into other communities that would have sign ordinances along other scenic byways. I'm sure there are some down in Washington County. I mean, you mentioned Blanding, Monticello. I think they also have scenic byways that we could look into if they do anything to keep those scenic areas preserved.
I appreciate you giving us some background information. Thank you. And I should have kicked it off by just explaining why this is a work item. So the council, what we have is we have an opportunity to look at our sign ordinance. We can have a sign ordinance review of the entire city. You know, maybe keeping monument signs, the lower signs that are like Burns Park sign height, as something that we want moving forward. Now there's some there's some things that might happen as a result of that. Some retailers want taller signs, depending, and we have allowed them in other areas. In this particular area along the West Davis corridor, where it's really the only scenic byway road we have, we could also just limit the sign height there. So it's really a discussion. We're having a work item to decide if that's something that you're wanting to do as a council, and staff will research it more and decide, give us our options. So I guess what we need to know during the work session is, do we want it to apply for the whole city, or do we want it just specific to this area? So I'll turn the time over to Councilmember Hunt.
Well, for that question, I think it's probably overkill to apply it to the whole city. Okay. I think there are some special circumstances along the West Davis corridor, like migratory birds, closeness to residential, that we would maybe want to consider more of instead of the entire city. That's kind of my thought.
Okay, yeah, that's good. So comments? Oh, Councilmember Jackson.
Just a quick question. So up to 30 feet, that wouldn't carve out the ability to do a billboard, correct?
So typically your billboards are advertisements for businesses that are not on the site that the sign is located. So could they do a 30-foot tall sign within the parameters set that might look more billboardish? Yes. But they wouldn't be able to advertise. They can have rotating advertisements.
They could just advertise what is there, the establishment there. Like car wash, gas station.
Yes. This gas station sign. If it's a, grocery store, this grocery store sign. It wouldn't be grocery store and advertising some radio station or some like homey. I mean, you see that all along the I-15. Like it would be only what is there on the location that the sign is.
Okay. And it would be my wish. I think 30 feet is way too high I think that's probably appropriate along I-15 in certain cases, but absolutely I would like to see us bring that down.
To a monument sign level, or?
I am totally for that. I think even across the entire city moving forward. There's other communities that do it. I think there's just so many signs everywhere, and it really brings down the community. We have the most beautiful mountains. If we just go north of here, I don't know what's going on with Layton or Ogden or Roy. It has just exploded with billboards, and even smaller billboards throughout with businesses. And so I would like to see us be a little stronger on this. With smartphones, people don't rely on signs as much. And so I would like us to have a more strict code just for Kaysville. So, well, we represent Kaysville, so of course.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments on this?
Sure.
Councilmember Adams.
Sorry, I had to run out to see a dog about a horse. The only thing that I can think about is, like, I keep thinking about the Seinfeld episode where they put in that chicken sign and it's blaring into Kramer's apartment, and he's just seeing the neon lights and he can't sleep. I just think that, like, we're looking at a specific area, and there's neighbors right there that bright signs, just signs in general would affect, like, the overall feeling in their house and whatnot. And so I think I feel like it's understandable for us to say, like, in this area, it doesn't make sense to have 25-foot signs.
So would you also be advocating for a monument type sign?
Totally
Okay.
advocating for that.
Okay.
Just as a point of clarification, we do have within our sign code regulations about lighting, about dimming, about time of day. I mean, I can scroll through there and show you, but I just passed that lighted signs. There's a lot of very specific definitions. And I'll say too, probably what you're seeing along the whole I-15 is, frankly, the billboard companies are a very powerful lobbying agency, and pretty much every city that has I-15 frontage, 215, has just been steamrolled by that group over and over again.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Blackham.
Comment I have is, because of what I do for a job now, I call it Groundhog Day every day. I see a lot of signs down in Station Park, and most all those signs are just signs that are on the walls of the buildings, because I believe most of the buildings and most of the places you want to go down there are destination driven. And I think the sign on the wall is just a signature for them, and it shows them where it's at. When there's 3 buildings in a row, it says this is our building. I think with the come and go coming, once you've driven down that road, you know where it's at. I think having some signs on their walls of their buildings to a certain extent is fine. I don't think there's any reason to have a bunch of signs hanging out in the streets. I like to keep them to a minimum, and I'm all for us doing that, because I think once come and go comes into the community and people get a little more used to it, I think having the signs on their buildings is going to be enough. It's going to be plenty. You're going to go buy gas. It's going to be there. I mean, realistically, they sell gas and food items. Not dinner, just quick food items. You're going to figure out where it's at, and you're going to know where they're at. It's a destination place. I don't think you have to have a sign out there welcome you from the West Davis corridor to come there, because I think if you're going to go there, it's there.
Okay, thank you for that. Councilmember Adams?
Well, I just think maybe, I don't know if this needs to be part of the work item, but I mean, how restrictive is this going to be on come and go? I mean, is that something we should discuss as an action item? Like, is that going to have to be part of our motion to put it as an action item, that it be restricted for businesses that will or have already applied? I mean, I think that probably is important.
I think our direction to staff would be that there's enough interest in finding out what would be next steps, putting together an ordinance specific to that area, and then letting staff let us know what is possible.
Okay.
Are you okay with that, everyone?
Great.
All right, so that's the direction. Is that clear enough? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's clear in my mind. I think Ms. Greenwood and I will work together, and we'll come up with an option or two, perhaps, that we think will address the issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Councilmember Oaks, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you think of if you drive down Legacy, and now what soon will be West Davis corridor. I mean, I used to go on Legacy every day when I was going to Salt Lake for work for a couple of years, and there's nothing. I mean, there's no signs there other than, when you're getting off at Parish Lane, or not Parish, whatever.
It's peaceful.
It's peaceful,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't see any. There's not a Maverick sign. There's not a Flying J or whatever. Is come and go on West Davis corridor? Is that going to be the only blip along the West Davis corridor as you're going up to Syracuse? I think that would be unfortunate if that were true and it was Kaysville. Now, come and go might like it because it might be a destination, and I'm not sure what we do. So I think the direction is probably best.
Yeah, and just a couple points of clarification. So I think there was enough head nods from the council that you want to look at the entire city and not just the West Davis corridor.
I think it's specific to West Davis corridor.
I think it's, yeah.
I mean, Nate did have an interest, but it seemed like everyone else was focusing on that area.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification.
At some future time, I would love to maybe just talk about pros and cons throughout the
Okay.
city.
Yeah.
But for this case, yeah.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. There is not a lot of signage, but also there is just not a lot of developable land along the legacy. You have the rail, and then you have the wetlands for the vast majority of it. And then further south, North Salt Lake, it's residential. So you don't usually advertise your residential with a sign, but I think that's a large part of it as well. Where there is developable land, like Farmington Station, they've chosen to have taller signs. But we'll look at that, and we'll come up with some options and bring that. Do you want to bring that back in another work session, or do you want me to just work through the process with the Planning Commission and bring that back after a public hearing and all of that? I guess I'm asking, do you want to give even more direction to staff, or do you want to just let us go work through the process with the Planning Commission and bring back a formal recommendation?
I think that would be our recommendation.
I'm kind of getting that we don't want to allow ground signs down there. We really don't want anything on a pole that's standing up with a ground sign. We want something that's more
monument type
fits
sign.
into the architecture, maybe within the building or something like that.
Yeah, do we need to be specific on that? Because I would prefer not to have it be taken back to the Planning Commission and have a 30-foot sign be one of the options.
No, I don't want
I think we all
don't
kind
want
of agree.
Right, I think that
right?
and even I think
so. Something
that's
more organic and incorporated, maybe more into the landscaping, or
yes.
just something
like a monument type sign, 4 feet or whatever they are.
Yeah, can we clarify how tall a monument type sign would be, just so that?
Well, right now our monument signs are allowed to be 8 feet tall.
Okay.
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 So.
Okay.
It's the gateway into Kaysville.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll just work through that process and work through the Planning Commission and come back with a ordinance recommendation.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks.
All right, council member reports. Anyone have anything?
I have one.
Okay, Councilmember Blackham.
The fire chief, Paul Erickson, wanted me to let you know that we did receive that $39,000 check from that grant for that equipment that we had on our consent item last council meeting. So we actually have the check.
Nice. Fantastic. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay, the only thing I have to report is that the legislative session is over tomorrow. The cities have been really involved in terms of being active on the Hill, saying, okay, we want to maintain municipal control over as much as we possibly can. And it's been a very successful campaign for the city, so I appreciate that. And appreciate everything that everyone does. We've got an outstanding staff, an outstanding council, and great community, so we appreciate all of you. All right, city manager report? Nothing to report? Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.